Welcome back to Tell Me More Stories Told This podcast. You ready for a deep dive?
Always. What have we got today?
Today, we're diving into one of those mysteries that just grabs you and never lets go.
Oh, like what?
The disappearance of Natalee Holloway.
That's a case that really captured the world's attention back in 2005, and it still resonates today.
Totally. It's one of those cases that makes you wonder what really happened.
The mystery is just so compelling. A young woman vanishes without a trace on a graduation trip.
In paradise, no less. Aruba. You think of beautiful beaches and relaxation.
And suddenly, it's a nightmare.
So let's start at the beginning. Paint a picture for our listeners.
All right, so it's May 2005, Natalee Holloway, 18 years old, bright future ahead of her.
Recent high school grad from Alabama, right?
Yep, she's in Aruba with classmates, celebrating graduation before college.
The all-American girl, ready for the next chapter.
She was a standout student, too. National Honor Society, full scholarship to the University of Alabama.
It's heartbreaking to think about what happened.
It really is. On the last night of their trip, May 30th,
This is where it gets really mysterious.
Natalee was last seen leaving a nightclub, Carlos and Charlie's, in Orangestad.
And she wasn't alone, was she?
No, she was with 3 young men, Joran van der Sloot, a Dutch student living on the island,
Okay, so a local, or at least someone familiar with the island.
and also with 2 Aruban brothers, Deepak and Satish Kalpoe.
And those 3 became the focus of the investigation, right?
Immediately, they were questioned extensively, even arrested multiple times.
So what happened? Did they have anything to do with Natalee's disappearance?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Their stories were all over the place, conflicting accounts.
Conflicting. How so?
Well, one minute they were saying one thing, then changing their story the next. It made things very difficult for investigators.
That's got to be frustrating, trying to get a straight answer.
And under Aruban law, the burden of proof for detention is pretty high. They didn't have enough to hold them.
So even though they were the last ones seen with Natalee, they were released.
Yeah, and that fueled public outrage, especially in the U.S.
I can imagine. The case just exploded in the media.
Absolutely. It was everywhere, especially on shows like Nancy Grace.
24/7 coverage, all eyes on Aruba.
It definitely added pressure to the investigation.
So what about the actual search for Natalee? What did they do?
It was massive. Hundreds of volunteers, Aruban authorities, the FBI, even Dutch soldiers searching.
Soldiers, wow.
They used everything imaginable. Sniffer dogs, helicopters, even aircraft with infrared.
For a tiny island, you'd think they'd find something.
You'd think, right? But Aruba's landscape is diverse. Beaches, rocky areas, even some scrubland.
So no luck.
Sadly, no. No trace of Natalee was ever found.
That's just baffling and heartbreaking.
And without a body, it was hard to build a solid case.
I remember reading that the reward for information kept going up, too.
It did. At one point, it reached $1 million, but still nothing concrete emerged.
It makes you wonder what happened to those 3 guys, though. Did they ever face any consequences?
We'll get to that in a bit. The story takes some really wild turns.
This is already a wild ride. I can't imagine where it goes from here.
Trust me, you won't believe some of the twists and turns this case takes.
Well, I guess we'll have to wait for part 2 to find out.
Exactly. Stay tuned, folks. This story's far from over. All right, so remember how we said those 3 guys, van der Sloot and the Kalpoe brothers, kept changing their stories?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was like they were playing a game with the investigators.
Well, fast forward a few years to 2008. Van der Sloot appears on a Dutch TV program.
A Dutch TV program? What was he doing there?
And get this, he seemingly confesses to being involved in Natalee's death.
Wait, hold on. He confessed. On TV?
Yeah, it was a huge deal, but there's a catch.
I bet there is. What happened?
He later retracted the confession, and the whole thing was super controversial.
Controversial how?
They used hidden cameras. It raised a lot of ethical questions about coerced confession.
Oh, wow. So was he being truthful or just trying to manipulate the situation again?
That's what everyone was trying to figure out. Even legal experts were divided on whether it was admissible in court.
That's crazy. It sounds like he just kept adding to the mystery.
He did. And then, in 2010, things took another twisted turn.
Oh, no. What happened?
He contacted Natalee's mother, Beth Twitty.
Directly.
Yeah. And he offered to tell her where Natalee's remains were.
Oh, man. That's just cruel. To give her that hope and then try to profit from it.
For a price, of course. He wanted $250,000.
Wow. He really was playing a dangerous game.
He was. The FBI got involved, set up a sting operation.
Did they catch him?
They did. He was indicted on extortion charges in the U.S.
So, finally some justice.
Well, not quite. He was in Peru at the time.
Peru? What was he doing there?
And just weeks after the indictment, he was arrested for something even more shocking.
This can't be good. What happened?
He was arrested for the murder of a young Peruvian woman, Stephany Flores Ramírez.
You're kidding? Another young woman.
I know, it's chilling, right? The parallels between the cases are eerie.
Oh, wow. That's terrifying. So what happened with that case?
He was convicted, sentenced to 28 years in prison in Peru.
At least there was some accountability for his actions. But it still doesn't bring Natalee back.
No, it doesn't. And for her family, the search for answers continued.
Even with Sloot behind bars, the mystery of Natalee's disappearance remained.
Right. And the question of legally declaring her deceased became a point of contention.
Because her body was ever found.
Exactly. Natalee's mother, Beth Twitty, she clung to hope. She opposed any declaration of death.
It's understandable to hold on to that sliver of hope.
But Natalee's father, Dave Holloway, he felt differently. He wanted that legal closure.
I can see both sides of it. What a heartbreaking situation for the family.
It was. And in 2012, a judge ruled in favor of Dave Holloway. Natalee was officially declared dead.
So legally, that was the end. But I imagine it did little to ease the family's pain.
It was a step towards closure, but the lack of answers about what truly happened continued to haunt them. It's hard to imagine the pain of not knowing. But even with the legal declaration, the story didn't end there. Natalee's father, Dave Holloway, he never gave up searching for answers.
It's incredible, that strength and determination to keep looking after all those years.
He even wrote a book about his experience, worked with private investigators, followed every lead he could.
You have to admire that dedication. To keep his daughter's memory alive and push for the truth.
And a few years ago, there was an Oxygen documentary series. They explored some new leads.
Oh, really? Like what?
One was the discovery of what looked like human remains in Aruba. It was a big moment. Everyone thought, could this be it?
I can only imagine the mix of emotions, hope, and anxiety. Did the DNA testing confirm anything?
Sadly, no, it wasn't Natalee. Another devastating blow for the family.
It's like every time there's a glimmer of hope, it gets dashed away.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if we'll ever know what really happened.
It's a question that hangs over the entire case. And it highlights the human side of these mysteries.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the investigation, the legal battles, the media frenzy, but at the heart of it all is a family that's been shattered.
And a young woman whose life was cut tragically short. We can't forget that.
Absolutely. This case had such a huge impact, not just on the family, but on Aruba itself.
You're right. Their tourism industry suffered. People started to see the island as dangerous.
Which is unfortunate, because one tragic incident doesn't define an entire place.
Exactly. And it raises questions about how the media shapes our perception of events.
It's a reminder to be critical consumers of information and not jump to conclusions.
Well said. The Natalee Holloway case also had an undeniable impact on the true crime genre.
I can see that. It had all the elements of a gripping story. The mystery, the international setting, the unanswered questions.
It captivated people's imaginations. And in a way, it paved the way for the true crime boom we see today.
With all the documentaries, podcasts, TV shows, it's a whole world now.
But with that popularity comes a responsibility, you know? We have to remember these are real stories, real people affected.
We can't lose sight of the human element amidst the entertainment.
That's so important. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this case, what are your final thoughts?
Well, it's a story that leaves you with more questions than answers. Will Natalee's remains ever be found? Will Joran Sloot ever reveal the truth?
He is actually being extradited back to the U.S. to face those extortion charges.
Oh, right. I'd forgot about that. So maybe, just maybe, there's a chance for some new information to come to light.
It's possible. And even after all these years, that possibility is what keeps people interested, keeps the hope alive.
And for Natalee's family, that hope is everything.
It is. Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a case that stays with you long after you've heard all the details. It makes you think, makes you question, makes you appreciate the complexities of life and the importance of seeking justice, even when it seems impossible to find.
Well put. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more captivating stories like this one.
We'll be back soon with more Tell Me More, exploring the mysteries and intrigues that shape our world. Until then, stay curious and keep those questions coming.